And he also obviously wants to try and guarantee some kind of financial payback from Ukraine.
Well, perhaps so, and obviously that his businessman's property developer's mind might seize upon these things, but it's true.
Yesterday and what we saw in the Oval Office, that will have very much changed the conversation and the tone of this whole weekend, and it also does actually really put the spotlight on the UK. You know, Volodymyr Zelensky is here on British soil now. It's very much Keir Starmer's hot potato to handle this week.
People talk about a special relationship between the UK and the US, but is that really true? Does America actually care about Britain's interest, or is it all just political theater? Peter Hitchens believes the UK is fooling itself, especially when leaders like Keir Starmer meet with Donald Trump, thinking it will change anything. And what about Ukraine? Will Western support last, or is the U.S. getting tired of the war? Peter Hitchens did not hold back when discussing Keir Starmer's meeting with Donald Trump. He made it clear that the idea of a special relationship between the UK and the U.S. is nothing more than a myth. People in this country like to believe America values us in a unique way, but that's simply not true, Hitchens stated. According to him, the U.S. only acts in its own interest, and history has shown that Britain's concerns are rarely a priority for Washington. To prove his point, Hitchens recalled how Bill Clinton humiliated the UK in the 1990s by granting a visa to Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams. Clinton didn't do it because he cared about Ireland. He did it because Irish American voters were a key support base for him, he explained. That decision, he argued, led to Britain losing control in Northern Ireland and effectively handing victory to the IRA. It was appeasement, plain and simple, he said. This, he believes, is a perfect example of how little the U.S. considers Britain's interests when making decisions. As for Starmer's meeting with Trump, Hitchens dismissed it as unimportant. Some people are calling this the most decisive meeting between a British Prime Minister and a U.S. President in modern times. That's nonsense, he said. He also suggested that some political commentators are exaggerating Starmer's significance. They want to make him seem like a bigger figure than he really is, but he just isn't, Hitchens said. One of his biggest criticisms of Starmer was his lack of strong leadership. For a man with a past in radical organizations, you'd expect him to have some passion, some conviction, but if he walked through a room, you wouldn't even notice, Hitchens remarked. He was also surprised by Starmer's handling of government affairs. I thought labor would be damaging to the country, but I didn't expect them to be so incompetent, he said. He pointed out Starmer's inability to provide clear answers, his habit of being vague on important issues, and his defensive attitude when questioned. For a lawyer, he sure has a problem sticking to the truth, he added. Hitchens warned that while Labor may seem ineffective in their public speeches, they are quietly making dangerous policy decisions. People think they're just dull, but make no mistake, they're doing real damage, he said. He criticized their commitment to net zero policies, which he believes are harming the economy. They are wrecking jobs with high taxes, and it's going to hit people hard, he said. He also took aim at Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. She's on a mission to destroy private schools for no good reason, he said. Hitchens also criticized Labor's handling of economic policies, particularly the recent budget. Rachel Reeves thought she presented a strong budget, but look at the damage it's caused. Nobody with any sense thinks it was a success, he said. According to him, Labor managed to convince people before the election that they were a competent government in waiting, but now it's clear that they weren't prepared at all. When it came to Ukraine, Hitchens was skeptical about reports of a new deal involving the country's natural resources. People are talking about a big mineral deal for lithium extraction, but these things take years to develop, he pointed out. He questioned whether Trump, who prefers quick results, would be interested in such a long-term project. Trump likes deals that pay off immediately, so will he really have patience for this, he wondered? Hitchens painted a picture of a UK government struggling to manage its relationship with the US while failing to address major issues at home. He dismissed the Starmer-Trump meeting as nothing more than a formality, arguing that Britain continues to overestimate its importance to Washington. The US will always do what's best for itself, he concluded. And Britain, well, we're just along for the ride. The situation between Ukraine and Russia remains a difficult one, with no clear end in sight. The problem is that neither Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky nor Russian President Vladimir Putin can afford to back down. If either of them were to admit defeat or agree to unfavorable terms, their political careers and possibly their personal safety would be at risk. If Putin gives in, he loses power. If Zelensky gives in, he loses everything, as many analysts have pointed out. This is why the war has continued for so long, despite the heavy toll on both countries. Now President Donald Trump is stepping into the picture, potentially pushing for a peace deal. But what does that really mean? Trump, known for his direct and results-driven approach, is unlikely to accept a long, drawn-out process. Some reports suggest he may encourage Ukraine to sign a mineral extraction deal that could give the U.S. access to valuable resources like lithium. Trump likes quick wins, some political commentators have noted, but mining is a long-term game. Even if such a deal is agreed upon, the benefits won't be immediate. Extracting and processing minerals takes years, and Ukraine is still in the middle of a war. Meanwhile, the U.S. itself seems to be losing interest in this conflict. Many in Washington initially supported Ukraine, hoping it would weaken Russia and prevent its resurgence as a global power. But as time has passed, it has become clear that the war isn't achieving what they had hoped. The U.S. has a history of getting bored with wars, one analyst remarked. Vietnam, Afghanistan, and now Ukraine. When there's no clear victory, they move on. The same pattern seems to be playing out again. While the U.S. provided billions in aid, they are now shifting focus, and some politicians believe it's time to cut their losses. At the heart of it all, Ukraine is in a tough spot. The Western support it was counting on is fading, and its military strength has not been enough to force Russia into a retreat. Zelensky, who once sought peace, now faces the possibility of having to sign a deal under pressure. If he's forced into a peace deal, it actually helps him politically, some experts argue. He can say that he had no choice, that the decision was out of his hands. This could allow him to save face while avoiding total defeat. However, not everyone agrees with Trump's potential involvement. Some politicians in the UK, like former Defense Minister Sir Gerald Haworth, strongly oppose him playing a role in peace talks. Trump cannot be trusted with this, Haworth has said. He believes that Russia should not be allowed to keep any of the land it has taken and sees any peace deal as a form of surrender. But critics argue that refusing to negotiate will only drag the war on longer. Who's going to fight this war? Who's going to pay for it? One commentator asked. You can say no to a deal, but that just means more fighting, more destruction, and no end in sight. Many believe the war in Ukraine could have been avoided if NATO hadn't expanded eastward after the 1990s. Some experts warned this would provoke Russia, and while the invasion was unjustified, it wasn't entirely surprising. I don't support Russia's actions, but NATO's expansion played a role, one commentator said. From 1991 to 2014, Ukraine was neutral and there was no war. But after closer ties with the West, tensions grew, especially in Russian-speaking areas. Many in eastern Ukraine have strong ties to Russia, a researcher noted. This division made peace harder to achieve. Beyond politics, Ukraine has suffered massive destruction. The real focus should be on rebuilding, not prolonging war, a journalist said. Ukraine has the potential to be a strong country, but it needs support beyond military aid. Amid this discussion, shocking news broke. Actor Gene Hackman and his wife were found dead in their home with no signs of foul play. This is heartbreaking, a news anchor said. Known for classics like The French Connection, his death saddened fans worldwide. So, what are your views on this? Do let us know in the comment section below. And for more such amazing videos, please do subscribe to our channel.